Okay, welcome everybody. I just mentioned this, but I'll briefly show it again. So there is a rubric for Milestone 2 posted on Quirkus with the assignment documents. So if you haven't checked it out, go take a look at that. It'll give more guidance as to how the TAs are going to grade you. And I'm just going to take a little bit of the lecture to finish off a few topics related to Milestone 2 in graphics that we didn't quite get to last week. Okay, so we talked about how we can draw things, and the key component to that was making sure you set the right coordinate system, and then making sure that you choose an appropriate amount of detail to draw at various zoom levels. Something else you have to do in Milestone 2 is you have to respond to user interaction, user input. So one of the user inputs that you have to respond to is mouse clicks. So people can click on your map. So a person might click there with the mouse, and you have to do something. So you for sure have to highlight intersections if a person clicks on them or near them. Okay, so how do we do this? Person clicked, I can say if a person mouse was clicked here, well, there's a certain intersection underneath that. But how do we figure that out? How do we figure out what intersection there is? Okay, ECGL can't do this for you. So it draws all your lines, all your rectangles, polygons, etc., but it doesn't remember what you drew. This is called immediate mode graphics. So you send commands, it immediately renders them onto the screen, and it forgets that it did it. So if you want to do what's called hit testing, so persons click the mouse, tell me what that person clicked on so I can take some action. For example, highlighting an intersection, you have to code that. And EasyGL gives you a callback function that helps you do that. So you can pass in that act on mouse button callback. And it has to have a certain function signature, has to take the EasyGL application pointer, a data structure that gives you information about the event, and an X and Y coordinate of where the person clicked. But you have to code in that function, or maybe some helper functions it calls, what does that mean? Okay, so we want to figure out what's closest to the XY in milestone 2 so you can highlight an intersection. And let me quickly show you that in the tutorials we go through that on intersections. I want to show you a slightly simpler example with just a couple of lines. Okay, so let me show you a little bit of code that is a small EasyGL application. So there's a bunch of setup code to create the window, and we're going to pass in a callback that should be called whenever the user clicks on the mouse, act on mouse press. Okay, so I've just got a couple of callbacks that are relevant. There's one to redraw my screen. So it basically just prints out a message about how many redraws you've done. And then it calls this function, which does the real drawing. Okay, what does this function do? It basically draws a couple of thick lines, sets the line width to be fairly thick, 10 pixels. I've defined num lines to be 2, so it's just going to draw 2 vertical lines. And I've got some state. So if I go up to the top of this program, let's see, so that's line 136. So if I go up more like line 10, see what's there, you can see that I've defined some global state. So I've defined a vector of Booleans. I only have 2 lines, so this vector only has 2 entries in it, but it tells me whether or not my lines are highlighted. All right, so I've got some global state, and I've got my screen redrawing function. So this draw highlight example will draw my 2 lines, and it's going to check, is a line highlighted? If a line's highlighted, it draws it red. Otherwise, it draws it black. So it just sets the color, then draws it. So that's part of what I need. And the other thing, so my redraw function has to be a little smarter. It has to check this state of are you highlighted or not to decide what color to draw you in. And then my act on mouse press. This is what's actually going to get called when the user clicks the mouse. And again, it has to have the right function signature. So I can't change this function signature. Got to get all those inputs. And what do? I print a message. So I basically print out a message to the console saying where was the mouse clicked. And then I basically go and unhighlight all my lines. And actually, let's start off with, let's say we didn't put this code in. Okay, so let's say we forgot this code. Make a slightly simpler version of this. Basically, I'm just checking which line am I closer to. Turns out that if these are vertical lines, so if my x coordinate where the person clicked is more than 600, I'm closer to the right line. Otherwise, I'm closer to the left line. I mark one of the two lines as being highlighted. All right. So let's run this. So let's first make it. And now let me do this highlight example. Okay, so you can see the two lines. You can see as I see all the redraws. Okay, so this is actually done 166 redraws as I was resizing the window. So you can tell you get a lot of redraws. Okay, so now you saw the code that if I click this, if I click somewhere in here, I should get the screen callback called. And let's see, zoom out, zoom in. Let me click over here. Okay, so I just clicked the mouse right on top of this line. I'm clicking over and over again. It's not turning red. Okay, so what's going on? If I zoom out, now it turns red. Okay, and now no matter what I do, these are both red. Okay, so any thoughts? Yeah, is there any thoughts on what I'm doing wrong here? Okay, this isn't quite what I wanted. I'd like to actually highlight whichever line I clicked on, but I'm actually doing a few weird things. First, the highlight didn't show up right away, and now I can't get rid of it. Yeah, so I got a couple problems. Different students have flagged it. So one problem, let's go here, and let's see. Oh, actually, I wasn't paying enough attention to where my messages go. So I'm actually printing to the status bar. Okay, so I'm not printing out to the terminal console. I'm actually printing to the status bar. So let's look at what happens here. When I click on that, you can see the mouse was clicked at a certain spot. X is greater than 600, so I should have highlighted the right line, but it doesn't seem highlighted. But if I resize the window, suddenly I see the highlight because I now get some redraws. Okay, if I click over here, you can see the mouse was clicked at 111, x equals 111, y equals 537. So that should have highlighted this other line, the left line, but it's not highlighting. But if I cause a redraw by resizing the window, I see it now. Okay. So yeah, various students have flagged what the problem is. So I got a couple problems. First thing is I should have unhighlighted everything before I highlighted whatever I clicked on. So in your milestone 2, make sure that as people are clicking on intersections, you don't just keep highlighting more and more and more stuff. You have to have some way to clear it. So maybe you only highlight one intersection, everything else is unhighlighted. Maybe you have a button that clears whatever the highlighting is, but do something. Your TA is going to look and make sure that you don't just keep highlighting more and more stuff. So if I change that line, that's going to fix that. And then other students also flagged what the other problem is. Why do I get this delayed reaction where I don't see the highlighting right away? It's because my screen redraw function will now draw using the proper color, but it doesn't get called until I need a redraw. So it doesn't get called until I zoom in, zoom out, resize the window, something like that. But I actually know that I've changed the way I want my drawing to appear, so I want this to appear right away. Okay, and see, this will test my memory because I'm not doing this in NetBeans, but I believe that's spelled as G. It's use the renderer, or actually, it's not the renderer; it's the application. Let's see. Yeah, this is actually testing my remembrance of the function name. So I'm going to go in and do it here. Let's see. Okay, so it's going to be application-refresh, I think. Yeah, application-refresh drawing. Okay, so let me go back here to save that. Okay, I'm going to compile this from the command line. And I think I did something wrong. expected semicolon before that. What did I do wrong? I thought I did have a semicolon. Okay. Okay, there is no semicolon. Okay, so I'm using two text editors at once, so it's easy to get out of state. Okay, so I've rebuilt that, and let's see what it looks like now. Okay, so I click on something, it highlights right away. That's good. I click, and it basically I'm properly unhighlighted. Okay, so make sure you test all of those things. And you can see if I click zoom in, I get a redraw, zoom out, I get a redraw, pan left, pan right. So EasyGL doesn't really know what you are drawing on the screen. It'll redraw these buttons for you. It knows about those, but it can't redraw your graphics. So it's just constantly calling you to redraw, which is why you want to, well, it calls you whenever there's an event, it needs a redraw, which is why you want to make that routine fast. So part of your challenge or milestone too is also to make sure your screen redrawing function is pretty fast. So scrolling and zooming feels pretty smooth. Okay, so let me go back and quickly share on the other screen. Hopefully that's all pretty clear. Okay, so I just showed you how hit testing works. A few more features. You can add extra buttons to EasyGL very easily. Just one call. So application create button. You tell it what you want the button to be called. You tell it what callback to call, and it'll automatically build it for you inside this kind of menu area on the right-hand side. So it's an easy way to make buttons. You can put a message at the bottom of the screen with, which I just showed you in that example, using application-update message. So if you want to have, a little bit of output to the user, it doesn't make them go look at the console, and you don't want to bother setting up GTK dialog boxes and so on, which is more work, you can draw very easily a string to that bottom area of the screen. If you want to go and do more advanced things, you can modify the UI layout using Glade. We talked a bit about that in the tutorial, and the EasyGL guide talks about how to do that as well. When you do that, you can add more widgets, so dialogues and other user interface elements. Those will be considered extra features if you go to that effort. And there's some guidance to get you started at the last half of the EasyGL Quick Start Guide. Okay, so we talked a bit about graphics. In this course, we're using two-dimensional graphics APIs to make a user interface and to visualize. If you like graphics, there are places you can go further. The course that goes the farthest is the CSC 418 computer graphics course. It teaches you how these graphics renderers actually work. How do we go from not just 2D objects, but 3D objects to pixels? You'll also, if you take software engineering, it's not guaranteed, but you're building a software project, and usually that'll include some kind of user interface. So you're likely to get more experience there as well. Okay, and that is all I have for today. With that, I'd like to pass it on to Dr. Tallman.
Great, thank you, Vaughn. Do you want to make me host?
Sure. I'm going to try to figure out how to do that right now. Okay. So you can, I think you can go ahead and screen share right now. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'll figure out how to make you host.
Okay, good, thank you. And let's get set up here. Okay, great. So I'm going to talk about OP1, just really kind of the planning stages for OP1, and then we'll continue tomorrow to discuss it in a little more detail. And probably we'll have a chance before we actually get to the oral presentations to get back in lecture for a little more discussion. Yeah, you may have noticed in the instructions that we've got an accommodation this year for COVID-19, and the main accommodation is that you'll be presenting on Zoom. And the presentations will take place March 22nd through March 26th during the scheduled tutorial blocks, and we'll be posting that schedule very soon. And for any teams who are unable to present at their assigned time, try to arrange an alternate presentation time with your CI as soon as possible. And let me just get something here, sorry. Good. So the rubric, you may have had a chance to view this. It's up now, and the main change to accommodate for the Zoom presentations is that we've allocated more marks to the team side. 70 marks will go for the team grade, and 30 will go toward the individual presentations. And for the individual presentations, we'll be looking at vocal delivery, right? We'll be considering that, I guess, most prominently. And we won't be assessing body language, kind of too unreliable to be able to make an assessment about that. So vocal delivery, that you articulate clearly, that you're audible, an appropriate pace with minimal verbal fillers. Preparation, that you show familiarity with the content and you're able to speak in a natural but prepared manner. So that means avoid reading from a prepared script. We won't be able to see if you're doing that, but often the delivery is kind of mechanical when you do that. So you want to kind of be natural, be in the moment, be present, be engaged, establish connection with teammates, with the audience. We may not be able to see you doing that so much, but try to find ways to do that where you're handing off to each other, you're acknowledging each other by name, perhaps acknowledging the audience, so that we get a sense that we're kind of connected with you in the presentation. And there'll be a short Q&A session that'll follow your presentation, and that will be part of the individual assessment. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to have you discuss with each other for a few moments the factors that you think are most important for a successful Zoom team presentation. Tomorrow, I want to spend a bit more time talking about this and suggesting to you the guidelines that I want you to follow. But before I do that, I'd like to hear from you so that I can incorporate some of your thoughts, some of your ideas. So if you could, let me just get the breakout rooms here, just 1 second. So just, we'll spend maybe 3-4 minutes at the most, and just talk to your group mates about which factors you think are most important.
Hello, am I the only one here? Ken, you might want to just check if there's anybody who is in a breakout room by themselves. I just joined the breakout room that it sent me to, and I was there by myself.
Were you?
Yeah.
I didn't notice any breakout rooms with just one person, but they should be ending very shortly here. So hopefully that would be a bit strange if it did send someone alone. I see some groups of two, but mainly threes. Okay, just get my screen share back. Okay, good. Thank you. I'm curious to hear from you, and you can bring this up in the chat, or if you want to join us. What kinds of things do you think would be important to you and to your team as you prepare for your Zoom presentations? So Isidore has wearing a suit. Maybe at end of term, this would be a good thing where the assignment instruction is that there's no dress code, but to look neat. And I guess that means looking neat from the top up mainly. We don't really know what you might be wearing below. But if you decide to wear a suit, Isidore, what I'd suggest is maybe that you have your teammates also do it, right? So that you have a unified kind of look. So I see that that Trevor is, sorry, this Windows coming up a bit strange for me, sorry. Suggesting to have a background, a professional looking background. And yeah, that's a good thing. Sometimes if you're at home, it's perfectly fine to have your home environment there behind you. But myself, I find my office space is kind of cluttered up, so I do use a virtual background. So you might want to choose a virtual background. Good Wi-Fi, certainly that always helps. And Trevor's point to not simply give a list of features, this is good. This would be a good suggestion whether you're on Zoom or not on Zoom, but selecting kind of main points would be an important consideration. So Taha's mentioning to come to the presentation having practiced the flow, and most definitely practice as a team. And you can record yourself, right? This is a great opportunity to record yourself while you practice, take a look back, give you a good sense of what's working well for the team, what you need to be kind of considering to improve for your final presentations. So Chloe has the question about cameras on or off. Is it mandatory? And it's not mandatory to have cameras on. This is not a hard requirement. We encourage it, certainly when you're presenting, and probably when you're not presenting, if you're just in the audience, probably a good idea to often have your cameras off. But I'd be interested to hear more from you on that point. When you do give your OP1 presentations, most of you will be presenting to 5 or 6 other teams, so that you'll have 15, 18 classmates there in the audience, as well as your CI. And it may be for the Q&A that you'd like everyone to have cameras on. This is something that we're going to make final decisions on certainly very soon, but I'm interested to get your thoughts on that. And so we definitely encourage cameras when you're presenting, but it's not mandatory. And so Isidore saying, knowing your content well, yeah, be prepared, practice it, but try to avoid memorizing. Some of us maybe are more comfortable delivering memorized speech, but for a presentation like this, you'll probably find that you get the best result just being prepared, being familiar with your content, and being able to speak naturally in the moment. Chloe mentions having cues and try not to speak over each other. And yeah, that's super important on Zoom, isn't it? It's we all know how distracting it can be if one person is speaking over another. So having careful cues set up so that you know when your teammate is finished, and sometimes give enough of a pause so that you're not breaking in over your teammate. Require your CI submit all questions 24 hours prior. For the Q&A, haven't thought of that. Usually, Isidore, the questions come up based on the presentation itself, so that your CI, for instance, might say, please take me back to slide number 7, and could you better explain that graphic to me? So that's often something that can't be kind of predetermined. So the questions will probably be coming kind of in the during the presentation. Some will come from your peers as well. So probably that'll be the Q&A will be more kind of on the spot in the moment. Avoid and ah. Good, I've got a little exercise. Actually, I probably will do it tomorrow to have your kind of teammates here, or at least group mates and classmates, monitor when you're speaking how often you're using verbal fillers, and get some feedback on that. And Vaughn, as Vaughn suggests, practice and record it. Yeah, and as I mentioned, that's a great feature for Zoom, is that you can go in, have a practice, record it, take a look back. And as Vaughn says, I'm always shocked at how many filler words I have in my lectures, and I too listen to me right now, and you can count them. So that's something we all can improve on. So these are great. These are excellent points. I'll take a look through these before tomorrow's lecture, and try to come in with some clear guidelines for you. But I appreciate your input here, and this will be helpful as go forward. So this is the bare bone instruction that's posted for the assignment. The purpose is to demonstrate to your classmates and to your CI your M2 map graphics, and we want you to engage your audience by introducing the main goals for your map graphics and identify what makes your map distinctive. You can imagine that your classmates won't be so interested in hearing about each and every feature that you implemented. They'll be far more interested in hearing about the distinctive features that set your map off from the others. And so this is a good point to bear in mind as you plan OP1. You want to explain your implementation with screenshots and or with video, and we'll supply some instruction if your team wants to use some video on how best to do that. And as you did with written document 1, you want to make a case that you have made your map responsive and discuss how the design of the graphics enhances the usability. And I've noted here to explain how you have accounted for user needs. One of the things that some teams do is they become fairly specific about a particular kind of user who would be using your map. You know, it could be someone who has recently moved to Toronto and is just becoming familiar with where hospitals are, where subways are. It could be for a tourist who is wanting to find the kind of the highlights of the GTA. Could be for a student, could be for any number of different users, could be for a universal user. So it doesn't need to be specific, but as you discuss your graphics and how they enhance usability, it's usually good idea to have a user in mind. Who for whom is it usable? And then conclude with a takeaway message, a quick, memorable point. And I was wondering, you know, with WD1, we didn't focus too much on made to stick, but now that we're moving back into the oral presentations, it may be a good opportunity for you to review the made to stick principles and consider which of the made to stick principles you might use in OP1. And maybe just take 30 seconds and think about that. Which principles might you be wanting to use in OP1? And maybe I'll just kind of jump in with a few thoughts that I had. Yeah, we've got simple, credible, and simple certainly that you know, delivering a core message is maybe something you want to consider. As I said, we don't need a list of everything you did, and in fact, we don't want a list of everything that you've done, but what was the main goal that you had, or main goals as you developed your graphics? Be simple with your slide design, just as we are wanting you to be kind of simple with your map so that it's not overwhelming. We encourage you to be simple with your slide design so that your slides are not overwhelming. And then finally, another way that you might use simple is in delivering a compact takeaway. The takeaway message doesn't need to be a list. It doesn't need to be a summary of everything you've told us. It could be going back to your core message, the main goal that you established for your M2 graphics. You might consider unexpected, that at the very beginning, when you're engaging your audience, you may want to sort of break the pattern, break your audience's guessing machine. We know that predictability sometimes creates boredom, so you want to create some curiosity. So you might do something that would break our expectation. As the Heath brothers recommend, it's usually a good idea to avoid kind of big surprises. They sometimes seem like too much of a gimmick, but you could consider how introducing a pattern breaker at the beginning would be to your advantage. And when you're explaining what makes your map distinctive, you know, you want to kind of show a gap, establish a knowledge gap, show your audience something that they don't already know, right? That would certainly be a way to create interest in the audience that you've got for the presentation. And again, for the takeaway, this is another opportunity to kind of break the pattern. You know, do something that surprises your audience. And so these are obviously just suggestions, different ways you could use the principles, not by any means saying that you are obligated to. Another principle I'll just quickly point to is stories. This could be very effective, that you kind of begin a journey and you continue the journey and you end the journey. And the journey might be very specifically just connected to what your team did. You could tell the story of your team's working process, or something about the decision-making process that your team used. So the story could be very specific to what your team did. And the advantage, of course, of a story is that it's concrete. It kind of sticks with us, particularly if you're able to continue it effectively through to the end of the presentation. And think of the other principles. How might you use the other made to stick principles in OP1 as well? Good opportunity to do that. So with slide design, just take a moment and maybe think over a few objectives that you have for your slide design in OP1. Now, this could connect to your past experience, maybe presentations that you gave in another course, maybe last year in APS 112, maybe things you did well or things you'd like to improve. It would be a good thing at this point, this early point, before you start to get too far into your slide design, to have a few objectives, a few things that you'd like to kind of accomplish for yourself. So, we won't take too much time right here, but that's kind of a personal thing that would probably be valuable for you to be thinking about now. And the Heath brothers in Made to Stick, they acknowledge Malcolm Gladwell's text, The Tipping Point, as a kind of a complementary text to their own. I think he wrote that some 7 years before the Heath brothers wrote Made to Stick. And there's a middle section in The Tipping Point called, I think it's called the stickiness factor, if I remember correctly. And so the Heath brothers kind of picked up on what Gladwell was doing there. And, one of Gladwell's main points there in his text was, is the message memorable? Which is, of course, kind of at the core of the Heath brothers text. And so you might think of this in OP1. This might be one objective is to make memorable messages. It's a good objective for OP1. And one of the sources that I like is Jean-Luc Dumont. Now you can visit his website. His message very much is kind of reinforcing this approach, which is to deliver messages, not information. Tell us the so what, not the what. So create presentations that are rich in messages. And this is 2 slides that he shows in his text. And take a look at the 2. Which slide do you think is most effective, and why? So any thoughts on which one you would think? Okay, the one on the left. Okay, if you say so why is it that the one on the left is more effective? Why is it nicer? The left gets across the message clearly, the font size, simple. Okay, so these are, I think, all good observations. The header here on the left is delivering the main message, the kind of the implication of the graphic, what it's showing us, whereas the header on the right simply delivers the information. We don't really know what it means. The left one tells us what it means, the right one doesn't. And I agree as well that the graphics are a little simpler and easier to process on the left. So these are not stellar slides in terms of their design, but I think the kind of nice way to deliver to exemplify what the point Dumont is making. So here's a few past examples. Some of these are a few years old now, so they might look a little old to me. I'm not sure if they look old to you. Past examples of OP1 slides that students have agreed to let me show in lecture. And so what do you think? This is a title slide. This will be the landing slide, the first thing that your audience sees. Any first impressions? Any first thoughts? An amazing title. It says what? How so amazing? Okay, the title is memorable. And why is it that that's so? Well, I just a few of my observations. One of the things I like is that it's uncluttered. We're not overwhelmed by a lot of unnecessary detail, so it's kind of simple in that regard. And to me, the name Maparoo is kind of memorable. It's kind of concrete. Something about it that it sticks. It's specific enough that it's stays. It's certainly stayed with me. And then they move into their slideshow here. And here I was thinking that I like the header. It's user focused, which makes it engaging. What can Maparoo do for the user? And you'll remember in Made to Stick that the Heath brothers speak about the principle of emotion in terms of kind of self-interest. You want to engage the self-interest of your audience or your user. So by appealing to the user, by appealing to you, it kind of engages emotion in that respect in terms of self-interest. So I like that. I kind of like the bullet list is, you'll notice it's parallel, that it's built on 3 verbs. So it has a verb series that's kind of clean. It allows us to quickly, effortlessly skim through the 3 points. This is another team's design, very different. It looks kind of startling to me as I look back. This is a few years back. This team created this slideshow, and I kind of like that they use the color coding so that we have this color coded connection to the 3 main points. And the slide itself then provides a kind of informative outline for the presentation. Get a sense of the 3 main areas that the team is going to discuss. And in an 8 to 10 minute presentation, such as the one that you'll be giving, if you're going into too much more than 3 areas, you're probably going too far. You won't get there. And if you've got 3 team members, it might make sense to kind of take on and consider the value of 3s here. The header should probably more clearly identify their own GIS, perhaps, and it maybe should be centered. One of the first things I noticed when I looked at it is that it seemed strange that they wouldn't have centered the header. And then they get into the slide deck. Following the information or the advice we got a few moments ago from Jean-Luc Dumont to deliver messages, not information, I think this is a pretty good header. It delivers a clear message that drawing imperceptible details is pointless. And so that seems to be in good form to me. And it's following this simple ordering plan. So that was kind of a nice choice at the beginning, that they made that choice to create the color code. Overall, there's a lack of clutter, makes it easy enough for us to kind of navigate the slide. And it engages us. It asks us, the audience, to make a judgment. Do you see a difference? So again, it's a way of engaging the audience in the presentation in the slide. And just one last slide from this group. Again, it's an informative header, makes a claim that the use of symbols and color coding improves experience. So presumably they're going to prove that as they show this particular slide. I was curious, though, I don't see any symbols here, so I'm a little bit unsure about what direction they're going to take. And I'm wondering here if we should believe this, that having less text and numbers is more appealing to users and easier to view. Maybe this is just common sense, but maybe this is coming from an authoritative source so they could establish credibility. Another one of the made to stick principles by citing information like this. And I'll just end with very quickly this more recent presentation by a team. I have nice graphics here with the nodes, Explorer map, kind of giving a nice specific title to the I guess the main kind of goal with their map design. And their first slide in after the title slide, kind of again, it's a kind of a roadmap for the presentation, which is maybe a good thing to do, right? Just kind of give us that overview, and it establishes some enthusiasm about the project, which is kind of a nice thing, I thought here, be careful with user-friendly. I'm not sure how that's different from simple and intuitive. That would be a note I would make. And I'm wondering if there's too many colors, right? We're trying to figure out what all this color is, maybe. And here we see the three items, they lack that parallelism that we saw in that earlier example. Here we have the first item is kind of an adjective noun, then we have a noun, then we have a kind of a verb form. And so it makes it hard to navigate through the 3 points, so that could certainly be improved. So I'm going to stop there. I see we're at 6 o'clock, and tomorrow we'll continue. We'll talk a little bit more about OP1. Professor Betts and I will show some slides together and give our commentary, and you can give your commentary. So thanks to all for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow. And I'll stick around for a few minutes for anyone who's got any questions. Or transitions in them. So, if you have a goal there that each team member is creating maybe, 4 slides each, something along those lines, it's not an overwhelming task. And so then being able to get the slides, assemble them early enough, once you've determined what kind of main focus, what you want to show is kind of distinctive about your team's approach. And if you're able to practice it 4 or 5 times, particularly recording it on Zoom, I think you'd probably be in pretty good shape. Don't know if that answers clearly, but this shouldn't be overwhelming. But the time that you spend together as a team will be kind of important, right? If everyone's off working by themselves, much harder to get a unified presentation together. Yeah, so that's a good point, Trevor, that you don't want to put too much info on one slide and overwhelm the audience. And then you don't want too many tiny slides. And so there, I think, Trevor, my advice would be is to be selective. Be selective about which features you want to present, and keeping in mind that your audience, your classmates are, just as familiar with this project as you are, so that you want to emphasize sort of the standout features of your approach. And so there you'd be able to make some specific choices about kind of what to focus on, and then build the slides accordingly. And you'll have an opportunity with your CI to get some feedback on your slide design as you build these. Some CIs are asking students to bring in some slides next week to the meetings, or the week after, and so you get a chance to get some feedback there. Yeah, and you can do live demo. It's sometimes a bit risky. It's best to have either some screenshots there in case the demo doesn't work, or to make a video. A video is a good option, and we'll give some information on how to do that. And so using a video to show speed would work well, perhaps. Not as risky as a live demo. Yeah, and sometimes even videos might not work super well over Zoom, true enough. And so, we can perhaps, hopefully we'll be able to give you more helpful guidance on that. I think the one thing that you do want to do is have screenshots as a backup, right? So that if the video doesn't work, or if you choose to do a live demo and it doesn't work, you've got the screenshots there as backup. Yeah, and if there's any internet issues, we will try to deal with those during the session, so that the presentation can, hopefully be completed. If there's a kind of, if the internet is completely kind of off and incapacitated, we may have to reschedule some presentations. We would just simply reschedule, but our goal would be to try to solve any problems during the presentation session as best we can. So Isidore, you're feeling that M2 is lots of work, and yeah, I hear you, right? And so I hope that that OP1 doesn't turn into too much of a time sink as well. I think that that hopefully, I think it's a presentation that if you make some good choices about what to focus on, that you can do it pretty quickly. And if your goal is to speak kind of naturally in the moment, as long as you're familiar with your material, as long as you know it and you're knowledgeable about your content, it can be done without undue preparation. And as Professor Betts recommends, don't go too crazy if you have other obligations. And yeah. So I'm going to turn off my recording here. It looks like questions have maybe slowed down.